So, in the last couple of months, there's been a lot of discussions about, joining the Big Ten, the defense, the coaches, and the like. I wanted to ask a question to Matt. Matt, if the Board of Trustees at USC called you tomorrow and said, Matt, we want you to be the athletic director at USC, and our sole charge to you is that within 5 years, we win a national championship. My question for you is, what would you do in terms of scheduling, coaching selections, recruitment, NIL, the portal? What would you do as the athletic director to maximize our chances of winning a national championship, other than what's being done now if you were given that charge?
In terms of scheduling, like one of the things that I don't think either Mike Bone or Jen Cohen have drilled deep on yet, or at least I don't think they've banged the table hard enough for, is the way USC travel is scheduled in the Big Ten. One of the things that I've mentioned, which I don't see this implemented in the short term, but maybe it's something that USC can get for 2026, 2027, and down the line. But one of the things I believe about, certainly for the revenue sports, instead of flying back to LA and then to the Eastern time zone each week, I think USC and frankly, if I was the AD at UCLA, Oregon, Washington, I'd be urging for the same thing. Spend 2 weeks in the Eastern time zone or in the the natural Big Ten Midwestern footprint. 2 weeks away, 2 weeks home, 2 weeks away, 2 weeks home, so that you're minimizing plane flights. So like you fly on a plane to a game site, and then you spend the next week at another game site that's just 50, 75, 100 miles away, a short bus ride, and you can basically camp for 2 weeks in the Midwest, and then you come home for multiple home games so that you can just get to stay in your home base for a while instead of weekly time zone travel. And so a natural thing to do here would be, when USC, in the odd numbered years, when you go to South Bend for the Notre Dame game in October, there should be a road game at Purdue or at Indiana in the week adjacent to the Notre Dame game. So like that way USC could just camp out in the middle of Indiana for 2 weeks. You're not flying for a couple weeks, and then USC would come home for multiple weeks. Like that's the kind of scheduling that USC needs in the Big Ten. So that would be an idea. But in terms of, if you were AD, what would you do? Well, I'd have to serve at the pleasure of Carol Folt. And I just think it's not really helpful to imagine a world where Carol Folt doesn't matter, because Carol Folt would have hired me. And so if she's paying my salary, like, what do you think I'm going to do? So without trying to be too critical of Jen Cohen, like, she's going to do what Carol Folt wants her to do. And Carol Folt hired her for a reason. So, like, we just can't live in a set of parameters that don't involve that.
I don't think USC's schedule is actually that difficult. They don't play Oregon. They don't play Ohio State. They get Penn State at home. They get Wisconsin at home. And really the only tough road Big Ten, I shouldn't say that. It's the most difficult road game USC has in as far as conference schedule goes is going to be going into Ann Arbor, but they're in a full rebuild as well. I don't think that if you're sitting down now, I don't think that this is get much easier for USC. This actually, the way it shapes up with their conference schedule is probably, on par with the best as it's going to get. Matt, if you disagree with me, feel free to chime in. But I don't think this is not an overly difficult schedule. Everyone in the conference, if you're playing a conference, we added an Oregon and a Washington and eventually a UCLA to an already stout top three they had, at least top three with with Nebraska and Wisconsin coming back up again. It's going to be a really difficult schedule, but that's what you want. We want to play in that. Did you get tired of hearing about USC and the 11 or the 9 dwarves we used to hear all the time during Pete Carroll? It's good to have competition.
Here's a couple points that need to be made. One point is that in the BCS especially, but also in the 4-team playoff era, things that Adam's talking about are really on point in that, having these schedule imbalances where the SEC plays only 8 conference games, Big Ten has to play 9, the Pac-12 played 9, SEC teams can play the Citadel in the middle of November before their rivalry game. They don't get punished for it. The SEC teams do have that much easier glide path to the playoff, to the national championship than USC does. So, I mean, what Adam's saying is an excellent
guys,
point.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but once again, the voices have gotten totally like mangled, and I can't hear. So, I didn't mean to interrupt. It's just like I don't know what happened with the reception. All I want to say is this: we go at Michigan, we're playing LSU, we're going at Maryland, we're going at Minnesota, we're going at UCLA, we're home against Notre Dame. We're home against Wisconsin. We're home against Nebraska and even Rutgers. When you compare that schedule to the schedules of teams like Ohio State and many teams in the SEC, yeah, I'm for competition, but not when other people have it way easier than we do. And I think that is a problem. I'm not saying we should go to the SEC or the Big 12, but I would say go independent. But I can't hear you because something happened again with the phone like it did a couple weeks ago. So I guess I'll hang up so I can give other callers a chance.
All right. Thanks, Adam. Yeah. Appreciate it. Yeah, I don't know, but you guys, listen. If you guys can't hear what we're saying, but please don't interrupt Matt. Matt, go ahead and complete what you were saying.
Yeah. So the point I wanted to make, and maybe Adam, now that you've ended your phone call, maybe you'll be able to hear what I'm saying more clearly. But the point to make is that whereas in the BCS and the 14 playoff era, those scheduling imbalances really did matter. Now in the 12-team playoff era, you want that tougher schedule. And why do you want that tougher schedule? Because in a 12-team playoff, you can now lose twice and get in. If USC goes 10-2 against this schedule, it's going to get in. And there's an advantage to be found there. Now, it's not obviously the challenge will be to get to 10-2, but if USC does get there, it will be in. And we all know that in the BCS era and in the 14 playoff era, the Pac-12 champion had to go 12-1. If the Pac-12 champion went 11-2, it was usually not getting in to a 14 playoff and certainly not into the BCS national championship game. But now in the 12-team playoff era, you can lose twice. And if you play a tough schedule and you lose only twice against that schedule, you get in. So USC now gets 2 losses. USC and the other contenders, Oregon, Washington, Michigan, Ohio State, if they go 10-2 in the 12-team playoff era, they are very, very likely to get in. So it's different from the 14 playoff, and it's night and day from the BCS when it was just 1 game and 2 teams. So that's part of it. And then the other part, Adam, is that this imbalance between the SEC playing 8 conference games and the Big Ten and Pac-12 playing 9. Obviously, the Pac-12 is dead, but the Pac-12 was playing 9 the past decade, and the Big Ten still is going to play 9. That's less about what Carol Folt wants to do in terms of switching conferences. That's more about college football not governing itself. So it's really not a Carol Folt problem. It is a sport-wide problem that we don't have these streamlined schedules and we don't have streamlined standards for everyone in all of the power conferences. You can't really lay that at Carol Folt's feet. That is more about the sport failing to streamline and regulate itself on a much broader and national level.
Yeah, and the USC schedule is tough. Don't get me wrong, but you could be UCLA. UCLA has Penn State like we do, but they have Penn State at Penn State. They have LSU like us, but they have LSU at LSU. So I don't know about you as far as difficult schedules are concerned, but it can be worse, and it is worse for some teams. So I know USC has. I mean, I think that ESPN came out with their FPI strength of schedules, and USC wasn't even in the top 30, I think, or top 25, which I think is absurd. I don't know what they're. I mean, I know the FPI. Correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but it's based on returning production, right? So I mean, it's not exactly who has the better players, etc. It's off of last year's returning production. Is that correct? Including people that transfer in? Do you know the distinction?
I'm not sure, but
Okay.
but it seems to be relatively accurate.
So where I don't think that USC's schedule is the toughest in the country, it's certainly a top. I mean, I can't look at USC's schedule and not think playing schools like Notre Dame, LSU, Penn State, Wisconsin, and Michigan at Michigan. How that could not be in the top, like, I don't know, quarter or where it would be, or top half of the, or 1/3 of the BCS, the Power 5 conferences. I don't get how they figured out these schedules or why USC would not be higher than it actually is. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because, strength of schedule, as far as that's concerned, the BCS days are over, so it's not factored in. They're going to look, if USC does well, and like Matt's talking about, if USC gets through that schedule with 2 losses and none of them are embarrassing losses, you could almost, I would have to say, you could almost punch a ticket for USC to get to that one of those spots for the at-large bids, for sure. Matter of fact,
I think we just won the national championship. Let's go.
I'm ready.
Can you guys hear me?
No, we thought you left. Yeah. Adam, go ahead.
No, I've just been listening, and I really appreciate the discussion and you guys taking the time. Again, I didn't mean to interrupt Matt. It's just the reception got really wacky for a second. But all I'll say is this: we're not going 10-2. We are going to go 7-5 or 8-4. And everybody in the chat who thinks I'm crazy, we have a schedule. Look at how we played last year. Look at how we've played the last 5 years. You think we're going to beat Michigan? LSU? You think we're going to win all those road games with all those cross-country trips? You think we're going to win at UCLA? We're going to beat Notre Dame? It's going to
we'll beat UCLA.
Don't blame Lincoln Riley for this.
A couple of things also. They're not walking across the country. They are getting on a chartered flight and flying there. I'm making light of it. I made the joke about the national championship. I'm not saying that. And do I think we're going 10-2? I think we can. I think we can go 10-2, but a lot's going to have to break USC's way, again, including keeping guys healthy at key positions. Now, to say that the season's over, there's no way they could do it, I would say it's probably just as silly as to say we're going undefeated, because that I could absolutely see a path where USC, because we don't know how good how good is Michigan going to be. Michigan might be really, really good. They might be really good, or they might be a freaking mess. We don't know. We don't know what Michigan's going to be. Penn State, we have at home. Penn State might be great, but I think a lot of people, especially when they're ranking Riley as a coach, etc., people are starting to forget this guy is a very good coach and an insanely good offensive coordinator. We saw what he did, with Miller Moss stepping in his very first game, starting in a high pressure situation, and the guy goes off. It wasn't like we were playing in some like Pop-Tart Bowl or some team that had no chance of beating us. It was a fairly good Louisville team that beat the Notre Dame team that kicked our ass. And so, looking at last year and projecting what this could be, because we don't have Caleb Williams, but we also don't have we don't have Alex Grinch anymore. We don't have the coaching staff that we had last year. So I think, Adam, before you start saying the season's over, maybe look at what we do have, weigh it against what we don't have, and just let's see how USC looks against LSU come September in Las Vegas, because that game, believe me, is gonna answer half the equation. The other half of the equation we got to figure out is, how deep is this team? How deep is it? Because right now we're saying, oh well, our interior defensive line is not very deep, blah blah. Well, we haven't seen Kobe Pepe play yet. We haven't seen we haven't seen any of it. So I just say, just hold off before you throw the season away.